Hi, I'm State Senator Joe Markley, back on my front porch, which is, if you've been getting these videos from me, means I'm talking about politics. And given the time of year and the situation, you might be able to guess the kind of politics I'm going to discuss. I want to talk about this presidential election as we go into the Connecticut primary on Tuesday. The first time, really, in my lifetime that Connecticut's vote in the primary will have some significance. And I'll be as honest with you about what I think about the situation as I can be. I don't see any reason not to be straightforward. And I guess I'd say I don't see any reason for any of us who are Republicans or conservatives or interested in change in the country to be mad at each other about the choices that we make Tuesday or over the next few months. I think that the difference of opinion is a normal thing, and that we have to be mature enough to respect that different people see the world in different ways. But what unites us, as I often say, principles of limited government, personal liberty, and fiscal responsibility are the things that we need to keep in mind. If we differ in one race, we need to be ready to pull together in the next one. And to pull together in November, to my mind, in any case. Obviously, this is a presidential campaign that is developed in ways that I think nobody could have anticipated. I'd like to find the person who a year ago would have picked Donald Trump and Ted Cruz as the two main contenders for the nomination at this point in time. It's, I think, a indication of the problems that we face as a country that we've had such unpredictable results in a presidential election. It's been anything but a scripted situation, anything but a controlled situation for those who believe that somehow there's someone in the back room who's pulling all the strings. I see three possibilities as far as the ultimate nomination goes. I think Donald Trump could be nominated on the first ballot. It may be a very near thing. I tend to think that if he doesn't make it on the first ballot, his support will start to fade. And that's not a reflection particularly on Trump. I think that's almost always the case in a convention. A person who comes in leading, if he doesn't get over the line, is the person who's the most likely to start dropping. And at a convention, once you start to drop, it's very hard to reverse the erosion of support. If Trump isn't nominated on the first ballot, I think Ted Cruz, who's certain to go in second place, will have a chance to get a majority on the second ballot or the third ballot. And again, Cruz has a chance as long as his numbers keep rising. As soon as he starts dipping, then I think the third option presents itself. And the third option is the unknown. I'm not particularly disturbed about that option either. Conventions, delegates are selected by a complicated process, different process in different states, for the purpose of going to a convention to pick a nominee. And that's the way it works here in Connecticut, even at the state representative level for multi-town districts, at the state senate level, the congressional level, the gubernatorial level. If you're familiar with conventions, there's nothing odd about the idea that the person who leads at the first ballot may not be selected. I saw races just in the very last cycle where a deadlocked convention for state representative picked somebody as the nominee who hadn't even been a candidate until that moment. So it's not unusual. And that kind of rabbit pulled from the hat is something we haven't seen in American politics for many, many years, but could conceivably be a good thing for the Republican Party. I wouldn't be surprised if it came to that, to see somebody who hasn't really been considered before or been a candidate. And if I throw out a name like Nikki Haley, like Mike Pence, the governor of Indiana, Condoleezza Rice, the former Secretary of State, I think a lot of these people would actually be very attractive candidates in a general election and capable of pulling the Republican Party together if we can accept the fact that the delegates have the right in the end to make the decision. People are suspicious of the complexity of the process. It made me think of the time that I took a charming Englishwoman to a baseball game, and she couldn't believe what a complicated sport it was, and constantly questioned me about why it's 3 strikes and 4 balls or whatever the rule was. And of course, if you grow up watching baseball, you don't think twice about it. But if you have to explain it, you really can't. You just say that's the way the rules work. That's the game we've learned how to play. And once you're accustomed to it, it doesn't bother you and it doesn't seem like a conspiracy. Um, I think the choice, as I said, is between Donald Trump and Ted Cruz, at least as it stands for us here in Connecticut. So let me start by saying a word about John Kasich. Uh, John Kasich's a man I've admired since he was a congressman many years ago. I think he's done a good job as a governor. I think I can see why people are drawn to him. The trouble is, not too many people have been drawn to him in the Republican primaries. He's been involved in something like 40 races between the caucuses and the primaries, and he's only won his home state. To my mind, in a way, he's the one candidate who proves that he shouldn't be the nominee, that he hasn't been able to attract the support in the party. And I think it's very unlikely that a open convention, a convention that was looking for an alternative, would turn to John Kasich, given his performance in those primaries. I don't think it's a. I know that people are. I know he does well in the polls. I think he does well in the polls because nobody has bothered attacking him, and in a way, he registers in the polls as a generic Republican. Believe me, if he were to be the nominee, Hillary Clinton would have plenty to say about him, and the Democrats would drive those numbers down very quickly and effectively. The fact that he hasn't been able to strike a spark with his own base makes me think that he'd have a hard time holding his own in the general election campaign. I fully understand the frustrations. I think I could say the fears and the anger that have driven people to look for somebody completely outside of the establishment like Donald Trump. You hear from me at Hartford, and I think you know how scared I am about the situation we face as a state and as a nation. And I think the idea of having somebody who's a real outsider, who comes from a business background, who isn't afraid to speak his mind, who isn't beholden to anyone, it's a powerful message. And Donald Trump has been, in his own way, a master communicator, somebody who had many years of experience at it, and has cut through the kind of the political chatter and been able to connect with people in a big way. My concern about Donald Trump, and I've said it since the beginning, is that I'm not convinced that he has deep political principles. That's not a moral failing. A lot of people don't have them. If you haven't been in this business, or you haven't had to confront them, or perhaps if you haven't thought about the history of the country. But to my mind, as I said earlier, there are very important principles, and limited government is one of the most important ones. I've been concerned about Trump ever since I read his history on eminent domain, which is something that we've been victims of here in Connecticut in the past, and something that I think is a very strong indication of where somebody feels, how somebody feels about government power and the real limits of government power. We need somebody who's going to return power to the states and power to the people and responsibility to ourselves as individuals. I think Donald Trump sees himself and presents himself as a manager, and he wants the ability to make decisions and make changes in ways that I don't feel will necessarily reflect the kind of belief in limited government that I have, that I think is the most important thing for our country, especially at this moment, but really at every moment. I think the man who has consistently shown that belief, more than any figure I've seen in national politics for many years, is Ted Cruz. He's very clear about his commitment to the Constitution, not only in his rhetoric, but in his actions as an attorney, as a solicitor before the Supreme Court. He's been very clear, very strong in his ability to stand up as a senator to a caucus, which is a very difficult thing to do. And I have a great deal of respect for him. I have to say that, like a lot of people, I don't find he's an easy man to warm up to as we see him on television, the only way I've seen him or am likely to see him. And that's true sometimes with political figures. It doesn't make them bad people. It's a funny thing about politics. I found, having known political figures in Connecticut, sometimes I have to know a person for years and know them well before I really have a sense of what's in their heart or what's in their character. sometimes even after knowing them years, I wonder. And I suppose I'd say that anybody in this business has their admirers and their detractors, including among people that they've known for a long time. I'm not inclined to make a decision about Ted Cruz just based on the fact that his voice or his face is not immediately appealing to me. I'm more interested in what his record is, and his record's been very good. And I would say, as a candidate, he has done an amazing job. Given that disadvantage, that he doesn't have the easy charm that one might wish for, and that in many ways his position as the insurgent was co opted by Donald Trump. I think Cruz has run a brilliant campaign to be in as strong a position as he is right now. And it gives me hope that if he were our nominee, he'd be able to put a very effective campaign together against Hillary Clinton. And I think score very well in a debate where anybody would concede he's an extremely well spoken, intelligent man. Um, Again, I'll say what I said at the beginning. One of the most important things is we act on our deep beliefs. We work our best to support the cause that we think is important. But in the end, we don't burn bridges between one another personally, because we're going to have to work together for a long time if we're going to get this state and this country pulled back together. Um, I hope that also people remember whatever happens with the presidential nomination, there are very, very important elections going on underneath that level. And here in Connecticut, especially in the state legislative races, we've got to get control of one or both chambers of the legislature to stop the dreadful progress towards the precipice that this state is undergoing. So I hope nobody is disappointed in the result, whoever they're supporting, and walks away in November. We need to work together, and we need to fight together, and we need to vote together if we're going to change things in this state and country. So I'm Joe Markley. Thank you for your attention, and vote Tuesday, and we'll see what happens. Take care.